The security guard was polite about it. That was the part that stayed with her. "Ma'am, this floor is restricted access. I'm going to need to see your badge or have someone come verify you." Professional. Calm. Doing exactly what the protocol said to do. She looked past him. At the lobby she had designed. At the reception desk she had chosen. At the hallway leading to the offices where 30 years of her work lived in the walls. And at the photograph. 8 feet behind him. On the wall she had specified, in the frame she had approved, lit by the fixtures she had argued for with the contractor, because the light mattered and she knew it mattered. And she had been right. Founding team. 1994. Her at 28. 2 colleagues. A company that existed because she had refused 14 times to accept that it couldn't. She was standing in the middle of that photograph. Nobody in the lobby was looking at it. "Of course," she said. "I'll wait." She stepped back from the door. Her name was on it. Cole Design Group. She stood in the hallway and looked at her name on the door and the photograph on the wall and the security guard doing his job and understood, in the specific, quiet way, she understood things that cost something, that she was going to stand here for a while. What happened in the next 47 minutes changed how she ran the company for the rest of her life. If this kind of story stays with you, subscribe. We tell stories that don't just move you. They make you look twice at the room you're standing in. She started watching. She had worn jeans deliberately, not as a statement, as a practice. Maggie Cole had been wearing jeans to the office on drawing days since 1997, when she'd ruined a good pair of slacks leaning over a drafting table and had decided that the work required the right clothes, and the right clothes for drawing were clothes you could move in. Today was a drawing day. The Dubai presentation was at 2. She'd planned to review the final drawings at 7, change at noon, be ready by 1:30. She was standing in a hallway at 7:14 in jeans and a jacket that had seen better days, and apparently looked like someone who didn't belong on the 12th floor of a building she had designed. She looked at her watch. 7:15. She could call James. James Park had been her COO for 18 years. He would answer on the first ring. He would come down immediately. He would handle it with the specific, efficient authority of someone who had been handling things for 18 years and was very good at it. She didn't call James. She stood in the hallway. She thought about 1994, not with nostalgia, with the specific working memory of someone who used the past as data. 1994 was the year she had signed the lease on a 3-room office in a building on Auburn Avenue with carpet that had been there since the 70s, and a landlord who had looked at her twice before signing. Once when she walked in, once when she put the check on the table, as though he needed to confirm twice that the check was real. She'd built Cole Design Group in those 3 rooms. Not alone. Marcus Webb had been her first hire, Diane Johnson her second, both of them young and overqualified and willing to work for less than they were worth because they believed in what she was building. She'd paid them back every dollar within 4 years. She'd kept the receipts. She kept receipts for everything. The founding photograph had been taken by Diane's husband on a Friday afternoon in October 1994. The 3 of them in the 3-room office, the carpet still terrible, the landlord's check cashed, the first project signed 2 days earlier, a community center in Vine City. $40,000 contract. She'd treated it like a $40 million contract because she understood that the first one determined how you did all the ones that came after. The community center was still standing. She'd driven past it last week. The photograph had gone up in the lobby of this building, the building she'd designed, the building Cole Design Group had moved into in 2009, because she'd decided that the beginning belonged in the middle of what had grown from it. So people who walked in every day would see where it had started and understand that everything around them had come from 3 people in a room with bad carpet who had decided to keep going. She looked at it now through the glass. At herself at 28, at the carpet that wasn't in the photograph, but that she remembered every time she looked at it. At the 2 people beside her who had believed in something before there was evidence to believe in. Mark Webb was now a partner at a firm in Houston. Diane Johnson had retired in 2021 and sent flowers every year on the anniversary of the first project. Maggie had sent flowers back. She looked at the security guard. Kevin. She could read his name tag through the glass. He was standing at his post with the contained, professional alertness of someone taking his job seriously. He was young, mid-20s, the posture of someone who had been told that how you held yourself communicated something and had taken that seriously. She recognized the posture. She'd had it at his age. She looked at the receptionist, Sandra, also young, also professional, currently looking at her screen with the focused attention of someone managing the morning's arrivals. She had looked up when Kevin stopped Maggie, had looked at Maggie, had looked at the wall, had looked back at her screen. Maggie had seen that. She filed it. She looked at the people coming off the elevator. In the 12 minutes she'd been standing in the hallway, 7 people had arrived for the 12th floor. She'd watched each one. 3 had walked straight through, no badge check, no question, direct eye contact with Kevin and a nod and through. All 3 were in suits. 2 were men. One was a woman Maggie recognized as a senior architect who'd been with the firm 6 years. 2 had been asked for their badges, shown them, been waved through. Both had been carrying bags that didn't look like briefcases. 2 had been asked to wait while Kevin called up. She thought about those 2, about what they'd looked like, about what she looked like. She thought about the protocol. She'd approved it in 2019 after a security review recommended tightening access to the upper floors. The recommendation had come with a framework, standard industry practice, the consultant had said, used by firms of this size across the country. She'd read the framework. She'd approved the framework. She had not asked what the framework looked like in practice. She was seeing it in practice now. She took out her phone, not to call James. She opened the Notes app. She started writing, not about Kevin, not about Sandra, about the framework, about the gap between what a protocol said and what a protocol did when it was executed by humans in real time, with real people walking through a real door. She designed buildings for 30 years. She understood the difference between a blueprint and a building. A blueprint said what something was supposed to do. A building showed you what it actually did. She'd been reading the blueprint. She was standing in the building. Her phone buzzed. Marcus, her son, not Marcus Webb, calling from Chicago at 7:19 in the morning, which meant he was already awake, which meant something was on his mind. She answered. Mom, he said, you okay? You never answer this early. I'm standing in the hallway outside my office, she said. The security guard asked me to wait. A pause. He didn't recognize you, Marcus said. No, she said. What are you doing? He said. Watching, she said. Another pause. Longer, he said. Don't stop. She looked at the photograph on the wall. At herself at 28. At the lobby that existed because she had not stopped. I won't, she said. She watched for 47 minutes. Not continuously. James had called at 7:32, and she'd spent 4 minutes convincing him that she was fine and that he should not come down and that she would explain later. He'd accepted this with the specific, practiced patience of someone who had worked with her long enough to know that when she said, I'll explain later, she meant it and the explanation would be worth waiting for. She'd gone back to watching. By 8 o'clock, she had 14 data points, not people data points. She'd stopped thinking of them as people she was observing and started thinking of them as information the building was giving her. Because data points didn't require her to feel what she was feeling about what she was seeing. And she needed to see clearly before she allowed herself to feel. 14 people had arrived for the 12th floor. The pattern had not changed. Suits went through. Everything else got questioned. Not always. Not with hostility. Kevin was professional throughout. She'd watched him carefully enough to confirm that. He wasn't rude. He wasn't aggressive. He was doing exactly what the protocol said to do. Use judgment to assess who required verification. The problem was what judgment looked like in practice. Judgment looked like suits. Judgment looked like briefcases. Judgment looked like a particular kind of confidence that came from walking into buildings like this one every day. and never once being stopped. She knew that confidence. She'd built it over 30 years. She'd been wearing jeans today. She thought about the 14 people, about the ones who'd gone straight through, and the ones who'd been asked to wait. She thought about the man who'd come off the elevator at 7:41, athletic wear, headphones around his neck, moving with the particular unhurried energy of someone who knew where he was going. Kevin had stopped him, had asked for his badge. The man had produced it, facilities manager. She'd seen the badge from where she was standing and had been waved through. She thought about the woman who'd come off the elevator at 7:47. Suit, heels, portfolio under her arm. She'd walked straight through without breaking stride. Kevin had nodded. She thought about what the difference was. She knew what the difference was. She'd known before she started watching. What watching had done was make it impossible to unknow. She opened the Notes app. She wrote, "The protocol doesn't say to stop people who look like they don't belong. It says to use judgment. We never defined judgment. We left it to fill itself in from context. Context is not neutral." She looked at what she'd written. She thought about the framework she'd approved in 2019. The consultant had been thorough. The recommendation had been standard. She'd read it in 20 minutes between two other meetings and had approved it because it had looked right. And looking right was not the same as being right. And she'd known that for 30 years and had approved it anyway because 20 minutes between meetings was what she'd had. She'd had what she'd had. She'd used it the way she'd used everything. Efficiently, moving to the next thing, trusting that what she'd approved would work the way it was designed to work, because she'd read it and it had looked right. She thought about every protocol she'd approved in 30 years, about how many of them she'd read in 20 minutes between meetings, about the gap between reading a thing and knowing what it did. At 7:51, a woman came off the elevator. 60s. Natural hair going silver. Paint on her hands, not fresh, the kind that lived in the creases of someone who worked with their hands and had long stopped trying to get it all out. She was carrying a flat portfolio case and a coffee from the place 2 blocks over that the design team used. Kevin stopped her. "Morning. This floor is restricted access. Do you have your badge?" The woman looked at him, not with irritation, with the steady, assessing patience of someone who had been stopped before and had developed a response that cost as little as possible. She put down the coffee. She unzipped the portfolio case. She found the badge inside, not in a lanyard, loose, the way badges lived when you used them infrequently because you were usually waved through by people who recognized you. Kevin looked at it. "Thank you, Ms. Freeman," she said. "Carol Freeman. I've been the lead muralist on this floor for 6 years." "Thank you, Miss Freeman," Kevin said. "Have a good morning." She picked up the coffee. She went through. Maggie watched her go. She knew Carol Freeman, had hired her in 2018 to design and execute the installation that ran the length of the main corridor, a piece that had been featured in Architectural Digest and that clients commented on in almost every tour. Carol Freeman had painted the walls of this building. She was carrying her badge loose in a portfolio case because she was usually recognized. Today she hadn't been. Maggie wrote, "Carol Freeman, 6 years. Badge and portfolio case, not recognized." She looked at what she'd written. She thought about who else was carrying their badge loose, about who else had stopped being surprised by being stopped, about the specific accumulated weight of walking into a building you'd worked in for years and still being asked to prove you belonged. She thought about herself at 28, about the landlord who had looked at her twice before signing the check, about the client who had asked at the first presentation whether she could get her supervisor on the phone, about the 14 rejections before the first yes, about what it had cost to absorb those things and keep going and build Cole Design Group into a $340 million firm, about how she'd absorbed them by deciding that she was going to be so undeniably good that the looking twice would become irrelevant. She'd been undeniably good. The looking twice had not become irrelevant. It had just moved inside the building she'd built. She wrote, "I solved the wrong problem. I made myself undeniable. I didn't make the building see differently. She looked at that line for a long time. Then she looked at the security desk. At Kevin, professional and correct. At Sandra, back at her screen. At the photograph on the wall that neither of them had looked at in the 47 minutes she'd been standing here. She thought about what the building saw. Not what she designed it to see. What it actually saw. What it had been seeing every day while she'd been on the 12th floor, running a company and trusting that what she'd built was working the way she'd intended. Her phone buzzed. Marcus again. She answered. Still watching? Yes, she said. What are you seeing? He said. She looked at the lobby, at the 14 data points, at Carol Freeman's badge in a portfolio case, at the protocol she'd approved in 20 minutes between meetings. I'm seeing what I built, she said, not what I meant to build. Marcus was quiet. Mom, he said. Yes, she said. Before they stopped you, he said. When you first got off the elevator, did you see anyone else get stopped? She went still. She thought back. The elevator had opened at 7:09. She'd walked toward the security desk. Kevin had stopped her at 7:11. In those 2 minutes before he stopped her, she'd seen one other interaction. A man in athletic wear, coming from the stairwell, moving toward the office corridor. Kevin had stepped toward him. And behind her, coming off a second elevator, a man in a suit had walked straight past while Kevin's attention was elsewhere. She'd seen it. In the 2 minutes before she herself was stopped, she'd seen it and she'd been processing her own situation, and she'd filed it away and kept walking. Yes, I saw someone. What happened? Marcus said. She told him. The athletic wear, the suit, Kevin's attention splitting. Marcus was quiet for a moment. And you kept walking, he said. Yes, she said. Why? He said. She looked at the lobby, at the photograph on the wall, at herself at 28, at the question her son had just asked her that 30 years of building things had not prepared her to answer quickly. Why had she kept walking? Because it wasn't her business. Because she'd had somewhere to be. Because she'd seen things like that before and had learned, had been trained by 30 years of absorbing and moving on to file them and keep walking. She'd kept walking. And then she'd been stopped. And now she was standing in the hallway understanding that the thing she'd filed and kept walking past was the same thing that was keeping her in the hallway. She'd seen it. She hadn't stopped. I kept walking, she said, because I'd learned to. Marcus didn't say anything for a moment. I know, he said. That's what I thought. She looked at the notes app. At everything she'd written, she added one more line. The building doesn't just do this to the people who come through it. It does it to the people who built it too. I've been filing and moving on for 30 years. That's not resilience, that's participation. She put the phone in her pocket. She looked at her name on the door, at the photograph on the wall, at Kevin at his post, at the building she had built that had been seeing the way it saw for 30 years while she had been on the 12th floor trusting that what she'd built was working. She reached for the door. Excuse me, she said to Kevin. I think we should talk. Kevin looked at her, not with recognition, with the specific, careful attention of someone who had been approached by a person they'd recently turned away and was assessing whether the situation had changed. It hadn't changed in the ways he was checking for. Ma'am, he said, has someone come down to verify? No, she said. I'd like to talk to you first. He looked at her. She looked at him. Not with authority, she'd made a decision in the 30 seconds between putting her phone away and walking to the door that she was not going to lead with authority. Authority would end the conversation before it started. Authority would make Kevin defensive and Sandra invisible, and she'd learn nothing she didn't already know. She wanted to learn something she didn't already know. I'm not here to report you, she said. I'm not here to make a complaint. I'd like to ask you some questions if you're willing. He studied her. What kind of questions? He said. About how you decide, she said. When you stop someone and when you don't. A pause. Something shifted in his posture, not defensiveness, something more complicated. The specific adjustment of someone who had been asked a question they'd been asking themselves. I follow the protocol, he said. I know, she said. I wrote the protocol. He looked at her, really looked. For the first time since she'd arrived, she watched him process it. The jeans, the jacket, the woman who had been standing in the hallway for 47 minutes, the things she'd just said. He started. Maggie Cole, she said. I founded this company in 1994. He looked at the door, at the name on it. He looked at the photograph on the wall. She watched him find her in it. 28 years old. Center of the frame. The same face 30 years later in jeans in a hallway. He was quiet for a moment, not embarrassed. She could see him working through something more substantial than embarrassment. I should have, he started. No, she said. You followed the protocol. That's what I want to talk about. He looked at her. Can we sit? She said. He looked at the security desk, at the lobby. At the morning arriving around them, more people coming off elevators, the building filling up, the day starting. I can't leave the post, he said. Then we talk here, she said. She leaned against the wall beside the door. He stayed at his post. They were 2 feet apart. The protocol, she said. When did you read it? Orientation, he said. 3 months ago. What does it say, she said. He recited it, not word for word, the shape of it. Restricted floors required badge verification or escort. Use judgment for ambiguous cases. Maintain professional conduct throughout. Use judgment, she said. Yes, he said. How do you know when a case is ambiguous, she said. He was quiet, not because he didn't have an answer, because he was deciding how honest to be. She waited. You can tell, he said finally, usually. Whether someone belongs. How? She said. He looked at her. The way they move, he said. Whether they know where they're going. Whether they look like. He stopped. Like what? She said. He was quiet. Go ahead, she said. I'm not recording this. I'm not going to use it against you. I want to understand what the protocol actually is, not what it says, what it is. He looked at the lobby. Whether they look like they're supposed to be here, he said. And what does supposed to be here look like? She said. He was quiet for a long moment. Suit, he said, beige visible, briefcase, moving like they've done it before. And if someone doesn't have those things, she said. Then I ask, he said. Always, she said. He looked at her. I try to be consistent, he said. She looked at him, not with judgment, with the specific, careful attention she'd been using all morning, reading what was actually there. Kevin, she said. Yes, he said. Have you ever been stopped somewhere you belonged? She said. He looked at her, the questions landing in a specific place. Yes, he said. What did it feel like? She said. He was quiet. Like I had to prove something I shouldn't have had to prove, he said. She nodded. I've been standing in that hallway for 47 minutes, she said, feeling exactly that. He looked at the hallway, at the spot where she'd been standing. I'm sorry, he said. I know, she said. And I'm not here about the apology. I'm here because the protocol I wrote put you in a position where you were making a judgment call that nobody defined for you. And judgment calls without definition fill themselves in from somewhere. She paused. Do you know where they fill in from? He was quiet. From what you've seen, she said. From what the building has shown you about who moves through it confidently. From who gets waved through and who gets stopped. From every signal that gets repeated often enough to feel like a rule even when it's not written down. He looked at the lobby, at the morning crowd moving through. The man in athletic wear, she said, 741. You stopped him. He looked at her. The man in the suit behind him, she said. You didn't. He was very still. I was, he started. You were doing your job, she said. I'm not saying you weren't. I'm saying the job as I wrote it required you to make a call that nobody equipped you to make fairly. She paused. That's not on you. That's on me. He looked at her. The specific look of someone receiving something unexpected, not absolution, which would have been easier, but accuracy. The look of someone being seen clearly and not knowing what to do with it. The protocol needs to change, she said. What I want to know is what it should say, because you're the one executing it. You know what it does in practice better than anyone on the 12th floor. He looked at her. You're asking me, he said. Yes, she said. I'm 3 months in, he said. I know, she said. That's part of why I'm asking. You're 3 months in and you're already filling in the blanks. the way the building teaches you to fill them in. I want to know what the blanks are before they get filled in. He was quiet for a moment. He looked at the lobby, at the morning, at the photograph on the wall. The badge system, he said, it's inconsistent. Some people wear them, some people put them away, some people forget them. The protocol says badge or escort, but in practice, if someone's confident enough, I'm not going to ask. So confidence substitutes for a badge, she said. Yes, he said. And confidence looks like what it looks like, he said. I know. She nodded. What would help, she said. He thought about it. A better system, he said. Not judgment. Something that doesn't require me to decide who looks right. He paused. An onboarding that shows us who's here. Not just the protocol. The people. He looked at the photograph. I've been here 3 months. I didn't know that photograph was the founder until right now. She looked at the photograph. At herself at 28. At the lobby that existed because she had not stopped. Neither did Sandra, she said. He looked at the reception desk, where Sandra had been sitting all morning, where Sandra had looked at the photograph and looked away. No, he said. I don't think she did. Maggie looked at the door, at her name on it, at the building that had been teaching people what belonging looked like for 30 years without her ever asking what it was teaching. Kevin, she said. Yes, she said. Thank you, she said. He looked at her. For stopping you, he said. For talking to me, she said. After. She pushed open the door. She went in. James was waiting by the elevator. Not pacing, standing. The specific, contained stillness of someone who had been waiting for a while and had decided that stillness was more useful than movement. He looked at her. She looked at him. You talked to him, James? Yes, she said. How long were you out there? He said. 47 minutes, she said. He looked at her. Not with the relief of someone whose problem had been resolved, with the specific attention of someone who understood that what had just happened was not a problem that had been resolved. Come on, he said. They walked to her office. Her office was the corner one. She designed it that way. Corner offices were a cliché, but the cliché existed because corners had 2 walls of windows, and 2 walls of windows meant light from 2 directions. And light from 2 directions meant you could see things clearly without having to position yourself relative to a single source. She needed to see things clearly. She put the banvey on the desk. The Dubai drawings, the reason she'd come in early, the reason she was wearing jeans, the reason the day had started the way it had started. She looked at them. Good work. The best work the firm had done in 5 years, sustainable design at a scale that hadn't been attempted in that region, every system integrated, every choice intentional. She'd been proud of these drawings in the specific, quiet way. She was proud of things that had required everything. She looked at them and didn't see them. James sat across from her. He'd been with her long enough to know when to talk and when to wait. He waited. Kevin, she said. Yes, James said. He's been here 3 months, she said. Yes, James said. He didn't know the photograph was the founder, she said. James was quiet. Neither did Sandra, she said. James looked at the window. At Atlanta outside, Peachtree Street doing its morning, the city moving at the specific purposeful pace of a place that had been rebuilding itself for 50 years and had gotten comfortable with the process. The onboarding, he said. We cover the history in the first week. The founding, the projects, the milestones. In a document, she said. In a presentation, he said. Did Kevin attend the presentation? She said. James was quiet. Security staff go through the agency's onboarding, he said. Not ours. She looked at him. So Kevin learned our protocol, she said. He didn't learn our company. No, James said. He didn't. She looked at the drawings. At 30 years of work that had produced this office, this view, this firm, these drawings on this desk. James, she said. Yes, he said. How many contract staff do we have in this building? She said. He thought about it. Security, 4, through the agency. Facilities, 6, through a different contract. The cafe on the second floor, 3, through the building management company. He paused. Cleaning crew, 7, overnight. 20, she said. 20, he confirmed. Do any of them go through our onboarding? She said. He looked at the window. She already knew the answer. No, he said. She thought about Carol Freeman. Badge loose in a portfolio case. 6 years painting the walls of this building. Not recognized this morning. She thought about the 7 people who cleaned the building at night, about whether they knew whose building they were cleaning, about whether it mattered, about why she thought it did. The protocol, she said. Who reviewed it before I approved it? The security consultant, James said. Legal, me, and none of us asked what judgment looked like in practice, she said. No, he said. Because it looked right on paper, she said. Yes, he said. She looked at the drawings, at the sustainable systems, every input accounted for, every output measured, every interaction between systems modeled before a single thing was built. She'd spent her career designing buildings that accounted for every system. She'd approved a protocol without modeling what it did when it ran through a human being. James, she said. Yes, he said. I want to know something, she said, and I want you to answer honestly. Yes, he said. In 18 years, she said. Have you ever been stopped in this building? He looked at her. Twice, he said. Both times before we moved in here. Different buildings. Client meetings. What happened? She said. I showed my ID, he said. I was let in. Did you say anything? She's no, he said. Why not? She said. He looked at the window. Because saying something had a cost, he said, and I'd calculated the cost before I was even stopped. She looked at him. At 18 years of working together. At the man who had been calculating costs in situations like that since before he walked into her office for the first time. You never told me, she said. No, he said. Why not? She said. He was quiet for a moment. Because you were building something, he said. And I didn't want to add to what you were carrying. She looked at the drawings, at what she'd been building, at what had been happening around the building while she built it. What else haven't you told me? She said. He looked at her. Not surprised by the question, the look of someone who had been waiting for it for a long time. The Miller presentation, he said. 2016. The client asked if you were going to be in the room for the full meeting or if you needed to leave early. He paused. I told him you were running the meeting. He said he understood, but asked again. I remember that meeting, she said. You don't remember that part, he said. I handled it before you came in. She looked at him. The Henderson Project, he said. 2019. The project manager called me to ask if the designs could be reviewed by a senior architect. He paused. You were the senior architect. James. The Dubai Consortium, he said. Last month. One of the partners asked his assistant to confirm that Cole Design Group was woman-led before the meeting. Not because he had a problem with it. Because he wanted to make sure he addressed you correctly. He paused. His assistant called our front desk. Sandra handled it. She was quiet. She looked at the drawings, at the $45 million project she'd earned, at the things that had happened around the earning of it that she hadn't known about. You've been handling things, she said. Yes, he said. For how long? She said. 18 years, he said. She looked at him, at the man who had been absorbing and filing and handling and moving on so that she could build, at the cost of that, at what it had cost him, at what it had cost her not to know. I didn't ask, she said. No, he said, but I also didn't tell. Why not, she said. He looked at the window. Same reason Kevin filled in the protocol with what the building taught him, he said. I filled in my role with what I thought you needed. I thought you needed someone who handled things so you could build things. He paused. I was right about what you needed. I'm not sure I was right about the handling. She looked at the drawings, at the Dubai project, at 30 years of building, at the specific, invisible infrastructure that had been running alongside the building, the handling, the absorbing, the filing, the moving on, that she had never seen because it had been designed so she wouldn't have to. James, she said. Yes, he said. After today, she said. I need you to tell me. Yes, he said. Not to protect me, she said. Because I can't fix what I don't know about. He looked at her. I know, he said. I think I've known that for a while. She looked at the drawings, at the meeting at 2, at the day that had started in a hallway and had become something else entirely. The Dubai presentation, she said. 2 o'clock, James said. I'll be ready, she said. He stood up. He went to the door. James, she said. He turned. Thank you, she said, for 18 years of handling things. He looked at her. Thank you, he said, for building something worth handling things for. He went out. She sat at her desk. She looked at the drawings, at the work, at the thing that existed because she had not stopped. She thought about what else existed, what had been built around the building. Invisible, load-bearing, never drawn on any blueprint. She picked up her pen. She started making notes, not about Dubai, about what needed to change. She called him at 8:47, not because she'd planned to, because she'd been sitting at her desk for 11 minutes, looking at the notes she'd made, and had understood that the notes needed something she couldn't give them alone, a different angle. Someone who saw the building from outside. Marcus answered on the first ring. You went in, he said. Yes, she said. How is it? He said. She looked at the notes, at the protocol and the onboarding and the 20 contract staff and the 18 years of James handling things and the Miller presentation in 2016 and the Henderson project in 2019 and the Dubai consortium last month. Complicated, she said. Tell me, he said. She told him. Not the business version, the real version. Kevin and the protocol and the 47 minutes and Carol Freeman's badge in a portfolio case and James across the desk and 18 years of things handled so she could build. Marcus listened the way he always listened, completely, without interrupting, the specific quality of attention she'd watched him develop since he was small. He'd been a quiet child, not because he had nothing to say, but because he understood early that listening produced more useful information than talking. He'd gone into social work for the same reason. She knew that. She'd watched it happen. Mom, he said when she finished. Yes, she said. The man in the athletic wear, he said. The one Kevin stopped while the suit walked through. Yes, she said. You saw it before Kevin stopped you, he said. Yes, she said. And you kept walking, he said. Yes, she said. Why, he said. She looked at the window, at Atlanta outside, at the city that had been rebuilding itself for 50 years. Because I'd learned to, she said. File it. Keep moving. Don't let it slow you down. Who taught you that? He said. She thought about it. Not the obvious answer, the real one. Nobody taught me, she said. I learned it. From 30 years of being in rooms where filing and moving on was the only way to stay in the room. And now you run the room, he said. Yes, she said. And you're still filing and moving on, he said. She was quiet. Yes, she said. Marcus was quiet for a moment. She heard Chicago in the background, the specific ambient noise of a city doing its morning. Traffic, voices, the elevated train somewhere in the distance. I want to tell you something, he said, about the work I do. Tell me, she said. I work with families, he said. A lot of them are dealing with systems, housing, benefits, schools, courts. Systems that were designed by people who believed they were designing something fair. He paused. Almost none of them were designing something unfair, deliberately. They were designing something efficient, something that worked for the most people most of the time. Yes, she said. The problem, he said, is that the people the system doesn't work for, they don't show up in the design process. They show up afterward, in the gap between what the system was supposed to do and what it actually does. He paused. And the people who design the system usually don't see the gap because they're not standing in it. She looked at the notes. At judgment calls, without definition, fill themselves in from somewhere. At the building doesn't just do this to the people who come through it. It does it to the people who built it too. I've been designing systems for 30 years, she said. I know, he said. I've never stood in them, she said. You stood in one this morning, he said. Yes, she said. For 47 minutes, he said. Yes, she said. Mom, he said. Yes, she said. The 47 minutes, he said. That's the most important thing that happened today. Not the protocol. Not James. Not even Kevin. He paused. You could have called James at 7:15 and been at your desk by 7:20. You didn't. She looked at the window, at the city outside. I needed to see it, she said. I know, he said. But most people in your position don't. Most people in your position call James, and get it handled and write a memo about updating the security protocol and move on. He paused. You stood in the hallway for 47 minutes and watched. And I almost didn't, she said. I almost called James at 7:15. What stopped you? He said. She thought about it. About the moment she'd made the decision, not a dramatic moment, a small one. Kevin had stepped back to his post, and she'd stood in the hallway with her phone in her hand, and had thought about calling James and had thought about the Notes app, and had chosen the Notes app. I wanted to understand it before I fixed it, she said. Yes, he said. That's the thing. What thing? She said. Most people fix first, he said. You understood first. That's not nothing. She looked at the notes. At everything she'd written in 47 minutes. At the things James had told her. At Kevin's face when she'd asked if he'd ever been stopped somewhere he belonged. It's not enough, she said. No, it's not. But it's the start. She was quiet. Outside, Atlanta was fully awake now. The morning that had started in a hallway was everywhere else just a Tuesday in February. Ordinary, unremarkable, the city doing what it did. Marcus, she said. Yes, she said. The families you work with, she said. The ones dealing with systems that don't work for them. What do they need most? He thought about it. To be asked, he said. Not what they need, that comes second. First, to be asked what they see, because they're standing in the gap. They know what the gap looks like better than anyone who designed the system. He paused. The problem is nobody asks. The people who design the systems are in the building. The people who live in the gaps are outside. She looked at the door, at the hallway she'd been standing in for 47 minutes. I was outside, she said. Yes, he said. And nobody asked me, she said. No, he said. But you asked yourself. She looked at the notes. At 14 data points and a conversation at a door and 18 years of handled things and 20 contract staff who didn't know whose building they were in. I need to ask more people, she said. He said. Kevin, she Carol, Freeman, the facilities team, the cleaning crew. Yes, he said. James, she said. I need to actually ask James, not have him tell me when something happens. Ask him. Regularly, what he's seeing. Yes, he said. And Sandra, she said. He was quiet. She saw the photograph, Marcus said, and didn't say anything. Yes, she said. Do you know why? He said. She thought about it. About Sandra at the reception desk, 3 months in, watching Kevin stop a woman in jeans, looking at the photograph, looking away. Because Kevin had already decided, she said. And Sandra was new. And when someone with more authority has already decided, the cost of saying something is higher than the cost of not saying something. Yes, Marcus said. That's the system working on Sandra too. She looked at the notes. The building doesn't just do this to the people who come through it. It's all connected, she said. It always is, he said. She heard the elevated train again in the background. Marcus, she said. Yes, she said. Come home for Thanksgiving, she said. Pause. Mom, he said. It's February, no, she said. I'm planning ahead. He laughed. The real kind, unexpected, coming from somewhere below the place where managed things lived. She hadn't heard that laugh in a while. She'd needed it. I'll be there, he said. Good, she said. I have a lot to tell you. You have a lot to do first, he said. Yes, she said. But I wanted to know you'd be there when I had something to show for it. He was quiet for a moment. I'm always there, he said. You just have to call. She looked at the notes. At what needed to change. At the building she was going to redesign from the inside. Not the walls. Not the floors. The systems that ran through it. The invisible load-bearing structures that determined who moved through freely and who got stopped and who handled things in silence and who filed and kept moving and who stood in a hallway for 47 minutes and watched. Marcus, she said. Yes, she said. Thank you, she said, for asking the question this morning. Before I stopped you. What question? He said. Did you see anyone else get stopped? She said. He was quiet. You needed to ask yourself that, he said. I just gave you the direction to look. She looked at the window, at Atlanta, at the building she was sitting in, at the direction she needed to look. I'm looking, she said. Good, he said. Don't stop. She changed at noon. Not into a suit, into the specific deliberate version of herself she brought to client meetings. Dark blazer, good shoes. The kind of presentation that said, I know what I'm doing, without saying anything. She looked at herself in the mirror in her office bathroom. Same face as the hallway. Different clothes. She thought about what the clothes did. Not for her, she knew what she was doing regardless of what she wore. For the room. For the specific, split-second assessment that happened when someone walked through a door and the people in the room decided, before she said a word, what category she belonged in. She'd been dressing for that assessment for 30 years. She'd never examined what it cost. She looked at the jeans on the chair, at the jacket that had seen better days, at the clothes she'd worn into a building she'd designed and been stopped. She picked up the blazer. She put it on. She went to meet the Dubai Consortium. There were 6 of them. Hassan al-Rashid, leading, 50s, the contained authority of someone who had been making large decisions for a long time and had gotten comfortable with the weight of them. 2 architects from his team. A financial director. A sustainability consultant. An assistant who was taking notes before anyone had said anything worth noting. They stood when she came in. She shook hands. She sat. They sat. James was at the end of the table. He caught her eye once. The specific brief look of 18 years of working together. The look that said, I'm here and nothing else, because nothing else was needed. She opened the presentation. The drawings were good. She'd known they were good at 7 this morning, and she knew it now. In the different, more certain way, you knew something after it had been tested. The Dubai project was the best work her firm had done in 5 years. Every system integrated, every choice intentional, the specific visible evidence of a firm that understood that sustainable design wasn't a feature you added. It was the logic you built from. Hassan al-Rashid asked good questions. Not the questions of someone looking for problems, the questions of someone trying to understand something well enough to commit to it. She respected that. She answered directly, without softening, the way she answered questions when she trusted the person asking them. By 1:15, the questions had moved from the drawings to the firm. Cole Design Group, Hassan said. You founded it in 1994. Yes, she said. 30 years, he said. Yes, she said. What do you know now that you didn't know then? He said. She looked at him. At the question she hadn't been asked in a client meeting before. At the morning she'd had. She could give him the professional answer, the one about sustainable systems and integrated design, and the evolution of green building standards over 3 decades. It would be accurate. It would be appropriate. It would be the answer the meeting expected. She gave him a different answer. I know what I built, she said. I spent 30 years focused on what I was building. This morning I saw what I'd built. Those are different things. Hassan looked at her. Tell me, he said, she told him. Not the full version, the version appropriate to the room. A woman who founded a company and arrived this morning and was stopped at the door by a security guard, following a protocol she had written, who stood in the hallway for 47 minutes, who watched what the building did and understood that buildings did things their designers didn't always intend. She said, I design sustainable systems, systems that account for every input and every output and every interaction between them. I've been doing that for buildings for 30 years. She paused. This morning I understood that I hadn't been doing it for the organization inside the building. I'd been building the structure and trusting that the culture would follow. It doesn't always follow. Hassan was quiet. His team was quiet. The assistant had stopped taking notes. The project you're considering, she said, it's the largest sustainable development in the region. Every system integrated. Every choice intentional. She looked at the drawings. I want to build it. I also want to be honest with you about what this morning taught me, that systems have consequences their designers don't see until they're standing in them. She paused. I think you should know that the person designing your building understands that now in a way she didn't this morning. Hassan looked at the drawings, at the systems, at the integration, at the specific visible evidence of a firm that had been building things the right way for 30 years, and had just started asking whether right was the same as complete. Miss Cole, he said. Maggie, she said. Maggie, he said. I've been in this industry for 25 years. I've sat across from a lot of architects. He paused. I've never had one tell me about a mistake in the middle of a pitch. She looked at him. It wasn't a mistake, she said. It was a gap. Mistakes are things you do wrong. Gaps are things you don't see. She paused. I'd rather you know I can see gaps than believe I don't have any. Hassan looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at his team. Something passed between them, the specific wordless communication of people who had worked together long enough to have a shared language that didn't require words. He looked back at her. We have one more question, he said. Yes, she said. The gap you described, he said. In your organization, what are you going to do about it? She thought about Kevin, about Carol Freeman, about James and 18 years of handled things, about Sandra and the photograph she'd looked at and looked away from, about Marcus and the people who design the systems are in the building, and the people who live in the gaps are outside. I'm going to ask the people who are standing in it, she said, before I decide what to fix. Hassan nodded. That, he said, is exactly how you design a sustainable system. She looked at the drawings, at the project, at $45 million of work that was about to become real. Does that mean? James started from the end of the table. Yes, Hassan said. We'd like to proceed. James looked at Maggie. She looked at the drawings, at the work, at the thing that existed because she had not stopped. She thought about the hallway, about 47 minutes, about what 47 minutes had cost her, and what it had given her, and whether she would trade it. She would not trade it. Thank you, she said. We'll do good work. I know, Hassan said. That's why we're here. After the consortium left, James sat across from her at the long table. The drawings still spread between them. The city outside doing its afternoon. You told them, he said. Yes, she said. In the middle of a pitch, he said. Yes, she said. He looked at the drawings, sick. It worked, he said. It wasn't a strategy, she said. It was true. True things sometimes work. He looked at her. Sometimes, he said. Yes, she said. Sometimes. She picked up the drawings. She rolled them carefully. The specific, practiced motion of someone who had been rolling drawings since before rolling drawings was the most important thing she did. James, she said. Yes, he said. Tomorrow morning, she said. I want to meet with Kevin and Sandra. Together, not to review the incident. To start a conversation about what the protocol needs to be. I'll set it up, he said. And Carol Freeman, she said. I want to meet with her this week. Yes, he said. And the contract staff, she said. All of them. I want to understand what their onboarding looks like. What they know about this company. What they see that we don't. That's 20 people, he said. I know, she said. Scaled him. He wrote it down. James, she said. Yes, he said. The things you've been handling, she said. The Miller meeting. Henderson Dubai last month. Yes, he said. Going forward, she said. I want to know, not so I can fix each one. So I can see the pattern. The pattern, he said. Yes, she said. Individual incidents are noise. Patterns are the system showing you what it does. She looked at the window. I've been missing the pattern because I've been missing the incidents. He looked at her. I'll tell you, he said. Thank you, she said. She stood up. She picked up the roll drawings. She looked at the room, the long table, the city outside, the afternoon light coming through at an angle that made everything look briefly like a better version of itself. She thought about sustainable systems, about every input and every output and every interaction between them, about the gap between what was designed and what was built, about what it meant to design something that accounted for everything. She was going to find out what everything meant, starting tomorrow, starting with Kevin and Sandra and 20 people and what the building looked like from the gap. She went to the door. Maggie, James said. She turned. Good pitch, he said. She looked at him. I wasn't pitching, she said. I was just telling the truth. I know, he said. That's what made it good. She went out. She started with Sandra. Not because Sandra was the most important conversation, because Sandra was the hardest one, and Maggie had learned at 28 that the hardest thing done first made everything after it easier. Not easier in the sense of requiring less. Easier in the sense of being possible. Sandra was at the reception desk at 8:15 when Maggie came down. The lobby was quiet at this hour. The morning rush not yet started. The building still doing the specific, transitional thing it did between empty and full. Two people at the far end. The security desk unmanned. Kevin's shift didn't start until 9. Sandra looked up when Maggie came in. She recognized her now. That was visible. The specific, involuntary adjustment of someone seeing a person differently from how they'd seen them before. Not fear. Something more complicated. The expression of someone who understood that a context had changed and was trying to locate themselves in the new one. Miss Cole, she said. Maggie, she said. Do you have a few minutes? Sandra looked at the desk, at the lobby, at the morning that hadn't started yet. Yes, she said. Maggie sat in the chair across from the reception desk, not behind it, across from it. The chair where visitors sat. She'd sat in it once before, in 2009 when the building had just opened, and she'd wanted to know what the lobby looked like from the outside in. She'd forgotten what she'd seen then. She was looking again now. Yesterday morning, Maggie said. When Kevin stopped me, you looked at the photograph. Sandra was very still. Yes, she said. And then you looked away, Maggie said. Yes, she said. Why? Maggie said. Sandra looked at the desk. Not from evasion, from the specific, careful consideration of someone choosing honest words for something that didn't have easy ones. Kevin had already decided, she said. And I'm new, and she stopped, and? Maggie said. And I wasn't sure, Sandra said. I thought it looked like you. But the photograph is from 1994, and people look different, and I didn't want to say something and be wrong. Maggie looked at the photograph, at herself at 28, at the specific reasonable doubt of a 22-year-old who had looked at a 30-year-old photograph and hadn't been certain enough to act on what she'd seen. What would have made you certain enough? Maggie said. Sandra thought about it. If I'd known you, she said. Not known who you were, known you. Your face. What you looked like when you came in. She paused. I've been here 3 months. I've seen you maybe 4 times. You're usually on the 12th floor. Yes, Maggie said. I am. They sat with that for a moment. Sandra, Maggie said. Yes, she said. If you had been certain, Maggie said. If you'd looked at that photograph and known, without a doubt, that the woman Kevin was stopping was the founder of this company, what would you have done? Sandra looked at the desk. I don't know, she said. I'd like to say I would have said something. But Kevin had already decided, and I've only been here 3 months, and she stopped again. Go ahead, Maggie said. The cost of being wrong, Sandra said. If I'd said something and I was wrong, if you hadn't been who I thought you were, that would have been a problem. Kevin's protocol would have been right, and I'd have been the person who undermined it. She paused. The cost of being right and saying nothing felt lower. Maggie looked at her. At 22 years old, calculating costs with the specific, practiced efficiency of someone who had been doing it long enough that it happened before she was aware of it. The same calculation James had been making for 18 years. The same calculation Maggie had been making in hallways and meeting rooms and client presentations since 1994. That calculation, Maggie said. The cost of saying something versus the cost of not saying something. Where did you learn it? Sandra looked at her. I don't know, she said. She stopped. Everywhere, I think. Yes, Maggie said. Me too. Sandra looked at her. Not with surprise, with the recognition of someone hearing something they'd suspected but hadn't expected to be confirmed. I want to change that, Maggie said. Not the calculation, the conditions that make the calculation necessary. I want this to be a building where saying something costs less than not saying something. She paused. That's going to take time. It's going to require things to be different than they are. But I wanted you to know that's what I'm working toward. Sandra looked at the photograph. Can I ask you something? She said. Yes, Maggie said. Why are you telling me? She said. I'm the receptionist. I've been here 3 months. You could just change the protocol and I'd follow it. Maggie looked at her. Because you're the first person people see when they come in, she said. What you know about this place and what you believe about it shows in how you receive people. I can't change the protocol without changing what you know. She paused. And because you looked at that photograph, you saw something. I want you to know that seeing something matters here, even when you're not certain, even when someone else has already decided. Sandra looked at the photograph, at the lobby, at the morning beginning to arrive, the elevator opening, the first people of the day coming through, the building waking up. Okay, she said. Not a large okay, a specific one, the okay of someone who had received something and had decided to hold it carefully. Thank you, Maggie said. She stood up. She went to the elevator. Kevin came in at 9. She was waiting by the security desk. He saw her and stopped for 1/2 second. Not from guilt, from the specific recalibration of someone encountering a situation that had shifted since they last encountered it. He walked to the desk. Miss Cole, he said. Maggie, she said, I wanted to follow up on yesterday. I've been thinking about it, he said. So have I, she said. Can we talk while you set up? He looked at the desk. Sure, he said. He went through the opening procedures, the specific methodical sequence of someone who did a thing the same way every time because consistency was part of the job. She watched him do it and thought about systems and sequences and what they communicated about the people who designed them. Kevin, she said. Yes, he said. Yesterday, she said. After we talked, what did you think about? He was quiet for a moment. The man in the athletic wear, he said. 741. Yes, she said. I've been going over it, he said. The sequence. What I saw, what I did. He looked at the desk. I stopped him because he didn't have the look. Not because of anything specific, just the aggregate of signals. The suit, she said. The suit, he said. The way he was moving. The bag. He paused. And then the man in the suit went through because I wasn't looking at him. My attention was on the first man and the second man came through, and I processed him automatically as someone who belonged. Why? She said. Because of the suit, he said. Yes, she said. He looked at the lobby. It's circular, he said. The thing I'm using to make the call is the thing that's making the call wrong. Yes, she said. That's what undefined judgment does. It borrows from what's available. And what's available is whatever the environment has taught you to associate with belonging, which is suits, he said. Which is suits, she said, and briefcases, and a particular kind of confidence, and being expected. He was quiet. Kevin, yes, he said. What would help? She said. Not what I've been thinking about. What you've been thinking about. You're the one at this desk. He looked at the lobby. At the morning, arriving around them. A system that doesn't rely on my judgment, he said. Not because my judgment is bad, because any judgment call done at volume gets systematized. I make 100 decisions a day at this desk. I can't think through each one from first principles. I need a framework that doesn't require me to decide who looks right. What would that look like? She said. Universal badge check, he said. Everyone. No exceptions based on how they look or how they move or whether I recognize them. He paused. It slows things down. People will be annoyed. But it removes the variable. The variable being you, she said. The variable being any person making a judgment call without a defined standard, he said. It's not me specifically. Anyone in this chair would have the same problem. She looked at him. At 24 years old, who had been at this desk for 3 months and had identified in 24 hours what a security consultant hadn't identified in a framework review, because he was standing in it. What else? She said. Onboarding, he said. Real onboarding. Not the agencies. I should know who's in this building. Not just the directory, the people. Who does what they look like. Why this place exists. He paused. I've been stopping people I should know. Carol Freeman yesterday. I stopped her. She's been painting the walls of this building for 6 years. I didn't know that. No, Maggie said, you didn't. That's on the onboarding, he said. Not on me. Yes, she said. It is. He looked at the photograph, at the founding team, at Maggie at 28. Can I ask you something? He said. Yes, she said. Yesterday, he said. When I stopped you, you waited 47 minutes. You could have told me who you were at 7-Eleven. Yes, she said. Why didn't you? He said. She looked at the lobby, at the building she had designed, at the morning moving through it. Because I wanted to see what it did, she said. Not to you, to everyone. I needed to see the building working before I could understand what needed to change in it. He nodded. And, he said, and it showed me things I couldn't have seen from the 12th floor, she said. He looked at the desk, at the lobby, at the morning. I've been at this desk 3 months, he said. I've seen things from here that I don't think anyone upstairs knows about. Tell me, she said. He told her. She listened. She wrote it down. All of it. The meetings took 3 weeks, not the conversations with Kevin and Sandra. Those had been 2 days. The rest of it. Carol Freeman on a Wednesday afternoon in the studio, sitting among her paints and talking about 6 years of walking into a building that didn't know her name. The facilities team on a Thursday morning, 4 people around a table in the basement conference room that most people on the 12th floor didn't know existed. The cleaning crew on a Friday night, she'd come in at 11, had sat in the break room while they took their scheduled rest, had brought coffee, and had stayed 2 hours. James had offered to come with her to each one. She'd gone alone, not because she didn't trust James, because she'd understood from Kevin's conversation that the presence of someone from the 12th floor changed what people said, not dishonestly. The way any context changed what was possible to say. She needed to hear what was actually there, not what was possible to say in front of senior management. She'd heard things. Not dramatic things. Specific things. The kind of things that lived in the gap between the 12th floor and the rest of the building, accumulated there over years, because there had been no channel for them to travel through. The cleaning crew didn't know the building had won an AIA award in 2015. The facilities manager had been trying for 2 years to get a supply closet moved because its current location added 40 minutes to the weekly maintenance cycle, had submitted the request twice, hadn't heard back. Carol Freeman had been asked 3 times by visitors whether she was the cleaning crew. She had answered politely each time. She had not told anyone. The cost of saying something, Maggie understood by the 3rd week, was not just a calculation that happened in moments of crisis. It was a permanent condition for the people who moved through the building invisibly. The calculation was always running. It never turned off. She'd written it in her notes on the first Friday night, sitting in the break room with the cleaning crew. The cost calculation doesn't happen when something goes wrong. It's the baseline. For some people in this building, the question is not whether to say something. It's whether the thing that needs to be said is worth the cost of saying it. And the cost has never been set by the people paying it. She'd read that back at midnight and understood it was the most important thing she'd written. The changes took 6 months to implement. Not because they were complicated, because she'd decided, after 3 weeks of conversations, that she was not going to design the changes alone. She was going to design them with the people who had told her what needed to change. Kevin had been right about universal badge check. They'd implemented it in the 3rd week. Everyone, no exceptions, the same process at the security desk, regardless of what you were wearing or how you moved or whether you looked like you'd done it before. It had slowed things down by an average of 40 seconds per person. 3 people had complained to building management. 14 people had told her, unprompted, that the building felt different. She'd asked each of the 14 what felt different. Every one of them had said some version of the same thing, like it's the same for everyone now. She'd written that down. The onboarding had taken longer. Not the design, the commitment. She'd wanted to build something that wasn't a document or a presentation, but an actual orientation to the building and the people in it. She'd worked with Kevin and Sandra and Carol Freeman and James and the facilities manager, whose name was Derek, to design a 3-hour session that every person who worked in the building attended, not just Cole Design Group employees. Every person. Security, facilities, cleaning crew, cafe staff. The session started with the photograph. Not as decoration, as the beginning of a conversation about where the building came from and what it was for and who had made it possible. She'd stood in front of that photograph on the first session and had told the room, 12 people, the first cohort, a mix of architects and security staff and facilities workers, about 1994. About the three-room office on Auburn Avenue with the bad carpet. About the 14 rejections. About the first project in Vine City that she'd treated like a $40 million contract because she'd understood that the first one determined how you did all the ones after. Kevin had been in the room. He'd heard the story. He'd looked at the photograph the way he should have been able to look at it on day one. She'd watched him look at it. She'd thought about what it would have cost. Not in money, in everything else, if he'd been able to look at it that way 3 months earlier. She'd thought about how many Kevins there had been before him, about how many times the building had been teaching people what belonging looked like without anyone asking what it was teaching. She'd added a line to the onboarding materials. Not at the end, at the beginning. This building exists because people built it. Not just the structure, the company inside it, the work it does, the relationships it holds. Everyone in this room is part of that. Your job, whatever it is part of what makes this place what it is. We want you to know that. We want you to feel it every time you walk through the door. She'd shown it to Marcus before she finalized it. He'd read it. He'd been quiet for a moment. It's good. But add one thing. What? She said. If you see something, he said. Say something. Not to management necessarily, to whoever's closest, because the cost of saying something should be lower than the cost of not saying it. And right now it's not. You're trying to change that. Say so directly. She'd added it. If you see something that doesn't feel right, say something. To whoever you trust in this building. The cost of speaking up should always be lower than the cost of staying quiet. We're working toward that. We need your help getting there. She'd shown it to Sandra. Sandra had read it twice. Is this real? She said. Yes, Maggie said. How do I know it's real? Sandra said. Maggie had looked at her. At 22 years old, asking the right question. You don't yet, she said. That's fair. Watch what happens when someone says something. That's how you'll know. Sandra had nodded. Not satisfied, calibrated. The nod of someone who had been told something and was going to test it against what they saw. That was the right response. Maggie had wanted anything else and had gotten what she needed. The facilities closet had been moved in month 4. Derek had submitted the request a third time in week 2, after Maggie had told every department head that requests from facilities and security and contract staff were going to be reviewed by her office within 30 days. She'd reviewed it in 2 weeks. The move had taken a day. It saved 40 minutes per week per maintenance cycle. Derek had sent her an email when it was done. 3 sentences. The closet is in the new location. It works the way it should have worked 2 years ago. Thank you for asking. She'd read it 3 times. She'd put it in the folder she'd started keeping, the folder of things that had been in the gap and had made it through. The folder was not large yet. It was going to get larger. On the last Friday of the 6th month, she went down to the lobby at 7:15. The same time she'd arrived on the morning, everything had started. The lobby was the same, the reception desk, the security post, the photograph on the wall. Different people. Kevin was at the security desk. He'd been promoted in month 3, assistant security director, a new role James had proposed, and Maggie had approved because Kevin had turned out to be the best analyst of the building systems that she hadn't known she had. He was training someone new. She watched from the elevator bank. The new person, young, first week, the specific uncertain alertness of someone learning a job that required confidence they hadn't built yet, was watching Kevin work. An architect came off the elevator. Suit, portfolio, the confident stride of someone who'd done this before. Kevin stopped her. Badge check. She showed it. She was waved through. A woman came off the next elevator. Natural hair, paint on her hands. Portfolio case. Carol Freeman. Kevin stopped her. Badge check. She showed it. She was waved through. Kevin looked at the new person. Everyone, Kevin said. Same process. The new person nodded. Maggie looked at the photograph, at herself at 28, at the lobby that existed because she had not stopped, at Kevin training the next person the right way. She thought about the gap, about what it had taken to see it, about what it had taken to start closing it, about what closing it actually meant, not eliminating it, because gaps in systems were never fully eliminated, but making them visible, making the cost of silence higher than the cost of speaking, making the building see what it hadn't been seeing. She looked at her watch. 7:18. She had a drawing to review. She went through the door. Kevin looked up. He didn't stop her. Not because she was the founder, because she had her badge visible, same as everyone else. The photograph on the wall was still there. Same frame, same light. Same three people in a three-room office in 1994 with bad carpet and a first and the specific unadorned belief that the thing they were building was worth building. Maggie had looked at it every day for 15 years without stopping. She stopped now. Not long, 30 seconds. Enough to see it the way Kevin had seen it on the morning of the first onboarding session. The way the cleaning crew had seen it when she'd shown it to them at 11 o'clock on a Friday night. The way Sandra had seen it when she'd finally had a name for the face in the center. The way you saw something when you knew the story behind it. She kept walking. Kevin's replacement at the security desk was a woman named Diane. First week, badge scanner on the desk, new, installed in month 2, the hardware that made universal check possible without adding significant time. She was learning the sequence with the focused attention of someone who understood that sequence mattered. Maggie stopped at the desk. Diane, she said. Diane looked up. Page, she said. Maggie showed it. Diane scanned it. Thank you, Miss Cole, she said. Have a good morning. You too, Maggie said. How's the first week? Diane looked at the lobby. I know where everything is, she said. I know who everyone is. That helps. Good, Maggie said. Tell me if something doesn't feel right. I will, Diane said. Maggie went through the door. She had a drawing to review. She had work to do. Subscribe if you're new. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, what have you been walking past that you needed to stop and see? I read everyone. See you in the next story.